This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, Heather, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter and welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe on this day. And on this day, October the 16th, 1969, the World Series ended. It was one of the biggest World Series wins in history. I mean, after all, the winner of the 1969 World Series was very much unbelievable. I mean, to say that it was an upset is a very big understatement. So anyway, so the 1969 World Series happened, and you got to have some. There's got to be some context. A lot of people said there's major context. There is context. The Baltimore Orioles were coming out of the shadows of the New York Yankees and becoming a very popular team. The Orioles had some stars and all that. In 69, they won 109 games, which was amazing. The most since the 61 Yankees. And easily won the AL East by 19 games. And then having to play Minnesota in the LCS. Because this was the first year of the League Championship Series, meaning that the winners of each division, the AL East against the AL West and the NL East versus the West, would meet in a best-of-5 series to determine who would go to the World Series. So no more having to win the American and National League outright to get into the World Series. Obviously, when you add 4 more teams to baseball, as they did, Montreal, Seattle, which ended up being Milwaukee the next season, Kansas City, and San Diego, you had 24 teams. So and only 2 teams get in. So you only had a 1 in 12 chance to make the World Series. Baseball's like, no, we need to add some more excitement. So guess what? They added the fact that 4 playoff teams out of 24. So you have a 1 in 6 chance, or basically a 1 in a 12 and a half, I think. No, that's not right. 1 in 6. You had a 16.6% chance. So anyway, the Orioles were confident. They took care of Minnesota easily, 3-0 in the LCS, to win their second pennant in 4 years. Frank Robinson, Boog Powell, and Brooks Robinson were the heroes. Pitching-wise, Mike Cuellar, Dave McNally, and Jim Palmer were the main superstars. By contrast to their opponents, the New York Mets didn't deserve to be in the World Series. Why? Because the New York Mets were created in 1962 as a way of trying to prevent something called the Continental League from trying to get baseball expansion. Although some people said the Continental League was only an excuse to make sure that baseball expanded past 16 teams. So the Mets were the first NL expansion team since everything started in 1901 to do it. Alongside Houston in 1962, they were in the league. The Mets were terrible. They were terrible. Their first season, 40 wins, 120 losses. I wonder if they would have lost the 2 games that they didn't have to play. So the fact of the matter is that 40 and 120, that's not good. That's 1 out of every 4 games, 1 win. So anyway, it was huge. Fortunately, though, the New York Mets were through growing pains and all that. The Mets' best finish was 8th in 1967 in the National League. But now with the National League splitting into 2 divisions, the worst the Mets could do was 6th in their own division. So that was the best part. The Mets used the draft to their advantage, getting Nolan Ryan, Tom Seaver, Jerry Koosman, and just starting from the bottom and lifting it up. The Mets run with using players through the draft and unheard of signings reminds me of the New York Islanders back in the 1970s when they were an expansion team, but then they got better bit by bit by bit and ended up winning Stanley Cup by 1980. So anyway, the Mets actually were underdogs. And the worst part for the Mets is that they lost their first game of the 1969 season, 11-10, to a team that was playing their first ever game, that being Montreal. The Mets were not really happy. However, strange as it sounds, in September, the Mets went on a super duper clip. They won 38 of their final 49 games. So they were at 38-11 and stormed past the Chicago Cubs to win the East, which meant they got to be in the first LCS. In the first NLCS, they took on the Atlanta Braves and crushed the Braves by putting on 27 runs in the 3 games. So that's amazing. Anyway, Tom Seaver was a hero. 25 wins, getting his first Cy Young award. Jerry Koosman and Gary Gentry combined to win 30 games themselves. Cleon Jones looked good. Tommy Agee was hitting home runs and saving home runs out in the outfield. Gil Hodges used a platoon system in which Ron Swoboda and Art Shamsky would play right field, would platoon in right field, and a first base platoon of Ed Kranepool and Don Clendenin. Ironically enough, Don Clendenin was actually supposed to be an Expo because there was a trade with Houston for Rusty Staub, but the trade fell through. Clendenin was on Montreal, and then they traded him to the Mets. Or no, wait, Clendenin refused to play for Houston because of its racial things and got traded to the Mets. I don't know how that works. But anyway, the Mets and Orioles would meet in the World Series in 5 games. The first game happened at Memorial Stadium in Baltimore. Mike Cuellar took care of Tom Seaver, and Baltimore used 4 runs in the 3rd inning to win 4-1. Game 2 was a pitcher's duel between Jerry Koosman and Dave McNally. The Mets scored first in the 4th, and then in the 7th, they gave up a run. But in the top of the 9th, there were 3 singles. Ed Charles, Jerry Grody, and Al Weiss. Weiss's hit scored Charles, so it was 2-1. Ron Taylor came in for the save after Jerry Koosman issued back-to-back 2-out walks to Frank Robinson and Boog Powell. But he got Brooks Robinson, and the Mets got out of there, only giving up 2 hits in Game 2. Game 3, once it went back to Flushing, was all Gary Gentry after taking care of Jim Palmer. Tommy Agee actually led out the game with a home run off Jim Palmer. But Agee is also known for his defense, especially in Game 3. With 2 out in the 4th, with runners on the corners, Tommy Agee raced to the 396 mark in left center and made a backhanding running catch of a drive hit by Ellie Hendricks. The Orioles in the 7th inning had the bases loaded with 2 out, but Agee made a headfirst dive of a Paul Blair line drive, which obviously was out number 3. Ed Kranepool would hit a home run himself. Nolan Ryan came in after Gentry's 6 2/3 innings and pitched the final 2 1/3 innings and earned the save. People forget Nolan Ryan was part of the 1969 Miracle Mets, and the Mets decided to trade him to Anaheim for the wonderful third baseman by the name of Jim Fergosi, who failed miserably. Game 4 saw Tom Seaver versus Mike Cuellar. However, there was a problem. Seaver's photograph was used on some anti-war moratorium day literature outside Shea Stadium before the game. And the pitcher claimed that his picture was used without his knowledge or approval. And there was controversy about the flying of the American flag at Shea Stadium because of what happened after Vietnam. New York Mayor John Lindsay ordered flags flown at half-mast to observe Moratorium Day to honor those who died in Vietnam. And people were actually concerned, including some wounded servicemen who were attending the game. But the American flag would have to be flown at full staff in Game 4. So Tom Seaver looked good through 8 innings. The Mets were up 1-0. Earl Weaver got ejected from the 3rd inning, the Orioles manager, for arguing balls and strikes too strenuously with plate umpire Shay Crawford. So he was out of the game. In the top of 9th, Seaver had trouble. Frank Robinson and Boog Powell hit back-to-back 1-out singles to put runners on the corners. Brooks Robinson would hit a sinking line drive. And Ron Swoboda, who was playing right field at the time, dove for it and caught it above the ground. The run did score, but Swoboda's heroics were huge because the Orioles could have taken the lead if the ball got past Swoboda. In the bottom of the 10th, Jerry Grody got a double. Al Weiss was intentionally walked to set up the force play and get to the pitcher's spot. The Mets decided to take Tom Seaver out and put J.C. Martin up to hit. Martin would lay down a sacrifice bunt, but Orioles reliever Pete Rickert hit Martin in the wrist with his throw to first, and the ball went down the right field line. Rod Gaspar, who was running for Grody, came around to score the winning run. However, there was a problem. Martin was running inside the first base line and kind of hindered Richards' ability to make a throw, and you can't do that. Subsequent controversy focused on MLB Rule 6.05K. It says that a batter shall be out with the ball dead and the runners return to their original bases if, in running the last half of the distance from home to first, while the ball is fielded to first base, he runs outside the 3-foot line or inside the foul line, and in the umpire's judgment of doing so interferes with the fielder taking the throw at first base. But the umpire's judgment said he did not interfere. Kind of pathetic, don't you think? So that was a big moment of contention and all that. That was very controversial, and I will admit that. So in Game 5, the Mets had a 3-1 series lead. Jerry Koosman was going to face Dave McNally again. And it looked good for Baltimore to force a Game 6 back at Memorial for Saturday the 18th of October. McNally got a 2-run home run alongside Frank Robinson, who hit a home run to make it 3-0. The Mets would benefit from a couple of umpire calls. In the 6th inning, Koosman appeared to have hit Frank Robinson with a pitch, but the play umpire said that the pitch hit his bat before hitting him and denied him first base. But Robinson was hit first, according to replays. The ball struck him on the hip, then bounced off his bat. That was the worst of it. The bottom of the 6th, the Mets were facing trouble, and Dave McNally bounced a pitch that appeared to hit left fielder Cleon Jones on the foot. And Cleon went to first base, but umpire Lou DeMuro said, "No way, get back to home plate. That bounced before it hit you." However, Gil Hodges showed the ball to DeMuro, who found shoe polish on the play and awarded Jones first base. And then after that, McNally gave up a home run to Don Clendenin, his 3rd home run of the series, which is a record for a 5-game World Series, which was tied by Ryan Howard in 2008 and Steve Pearce in 2018. They got the lead to 3-2. So there's a lot of problems with the shoe polish thing because it reminded everyone in 1957 about a Nipsey Jones play for the Milwaukee Braves. Anyway, the Mets would tie the game on a home run by Al Weiss, who was really not a home run hitter. He was very light hitting. He only had 7 home runs in his big league career. And in fact, this was the only home run he hit at Shea Stadium. And weird enough, Weiss led batters in the series with a .455 batting average. The winning run scored in the 8th inning as Ron Swoboda had an RBI double. Swoboda scored when Jerry Grody's grounder was mishandled by Boog Powell at first base. Jerry Koosman got the win, the 2nd of the series, and New York went nuts. They stormed the field like you've never seen them storm before. It was amazing. Thousands of fans rushed on the field, and the Mets were forced to retreat. Now, there would be a lot of people who say stuff like, this rarely happens. And it does happen. Rarely happen. I mean, it's surprising. For all 4 Met victories, their starting first baseman hit a home run. Don Clendenin hit home runs in games 2, 4, and 5. Ed Kranepool started game 3 at first base and hit a home run. So the expression "good pitching defeats good hitting" was never more evident. Baltimore only had a 146 batting average, which was a low mark for a 5-game series. But in fact, after winning Game 1, Baltimore would only have a 134 batting average for the next 4 games. Boog Powell led the Orioles with 5 hits. There were a lot of mistakes. Frank Robinson was only 3 for 16. Brooks Robinson was only 1 for 19. So the Mets had their pitching and all that. Everyone knows about the legacy and all that, which was weird. But here's the weird part. This was the second time a New York team beat a Baltimore team for a title in 1969. Lest we forget, Super Bowl III, New York Jets beating the Baltimore Colts to get the title. And, ironically, NBC broadcast that Super Bowl. In addition, the New York Knicks in the 1969 NBA playoffs eliminated the Baltimore Bullets. That was where the team was before going to Washington. And all that. The Knicks actually defeated the Bullets again in the 1970 playoffs to get their first title. So as a result, New York was the first city to have a World Series and NBA championship within a year's calendar span. And the ironic part was that Davey Johnson, who flew out for the last out as a member of the Orioles in '69, actually managed the team in 1986. The pitcher, yeah, a lot of things happened and all that. Tom Seaver actually was part of the '86 Mets, was part of the '86 World Series as a member of the Red Sox, strange enough, but he didn't play because of an injury. World Series because of an injury. And strange enough, the Mets also, with their World Series title in '86, that was in conjunction to a New York Super Bowl win, this time by the Giants, who beat the Broncos, Super Bowl 21. The Orioles did repeat as AL East champions and won the World Series against Cincy, thanks to Brooks Robinson's defensive work. The Mets did go back to the World Series in 1973, even though they were 82-79 and won the AL East, which the Expos obviously were favorites to maybe get. But they lost to Oakland in 7 games, despite the fact that the Mets were up 3-2, headed back to Oakland. So, yeah. This was a lot of things. So, yeah, only 24 runs combined. In that series. NBC televised the series. Kirk Gowdy would share play-by-play with Bill O'Donnell for the games in Baltimore, and Lindsey Nelson when the games were in New York. Tony Kubek would be the field reporter and interviewer. NBC Radio broadcast the games, with Jim Simpson being the main guys, alongside Ruff Kiner and Bill O'Donnell. Surprised that Chuck Thompson wasn't there, because I know Chuck Thompson was a big broadcaster for the Orioles. Anyway, NBC's telecast of games 1 and 2 were preserved on Kinescope by the CBC, which is amazing that the CBC helped that. Games 3, 4, and 5 are in original color quality from truck feeds, including the pregame coverage of Simpson, Koufax, and Mantle. So that's why you got to see those games 3, 4, and 5 in color for the Mets at home. So it was amazing. The 1969 World Series brought a lot of people together and brought underdogs their day in court. A baseball court, in fact. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.